Hello and welcome back to another video where today's focus will be on CPU utilization in Helldivers 2. Main reason why I wanted to do this is because this game does appear to be a bit CPU demanding, and I also wanted to compare my Ryzen 5900X versus my Ryzen 7800X 3D paired with an RTX 4090. We're going to check out 4K, 1440p, 1080p, different render scales, and that sort of thing. So let's not waste any time and hell dive straight into it. We're going to begin with 4K native on Fenrir, which is like an icy planet with it's a bug planet essentially, and I played this by myself. The second half of the video will focus on multiplayer and group full of people, a lot of stuff going on in a mech planet that's more demanding than this. There's more stuff going on that would be heavier on the CPU. But this I wanted to make because I wanted to keep things as close to one another as possible. Because in this game, when you're playing with a group of people, it's hard to really capture footage that's identical or as close to it as possible. So that's kind of why I wanted the first half to focus on 4K, 1440p, and 1080p. And this one here is at 4K with maxed out settings. And as you can see, the differences are not really big. There are differences, but they're not really all that noticeable. So at 4K, even with an RTX 4090 with maxed out graphics, the performance is pretty close. As a matter of fact, if we were to compare the metrics for 4K between the two CPUs, the averages on the 7800X 3D are around 6% faster and 1% lows, 9% faster. So nothing earth-shattering. You might not even notice the difference. I can't really say that I did, but it is there. I mean, 10% is not bad, you know, for frame time consistency. But you also got to keep in mind that there is some variability in this game, and I will show that to you later on when we're in the group. But for now, trying to match the footage and the mission as close as possible, these are the differences at 4K. Not that crazy. Let's check out 1440p. We're going to begin by showing the settings, like always, and we're running the game at 1440p. Just drop the resolution from 4K. We're still keeping the ultra graphical settings as well. Now right away you can tell that there is a very noticeable difference at 1440p. And again, just keep in mind that this is somewhat of a quieter planet, I guess you could say. It's not as crazy as some of the other ones, although it is very representative of bug planets that I've played. The mech planets tend to be the ones that are the craziest, which we're gonna take a look at later. But if we were to compare the numbers at the end of the recording and the mission playing on both CPUs at 1440p, we have a pretty big difference. The 7800X 3D is 21% faster on the averages than the 5900X and 31% faster on the 1% lows. Those are big numbers, big gains. The game definitely feels a lot smoother on the 7800X 3D. Obviously, the 1% lows, in my opinion, are the most important metric, and we can now see the 4090 is able to stretch its legs, and the 7800X 3D also has the ability to stretch its legs. You can look at the GPU utilization on the 5900X and you can see that it's well below 90%. As a matter of fact, it's hovering around 70s and 80s. So the 5900X is CPU bound here, definitely. Based off the many reviews that have been done, we know that the 7800X 3D is around 30% faster than the 5900X in gaming. But you also need the GPU to be able to get that out of the CPU too, right? Depends on the game and resolution. Anyway, let's check out 1080p. We'll begin by going through the settings like always, and as you can see here, we've dropped now to 1080p with ultra and high settings. And I know some people are going to say, well, who plays with a 4090 at 1080p? You might actually be surprised. There are people who use a 4090 at 1080p. I've spoken to a few of them on Reddit, actually. It's just people that love to play at high refresh rates. Mostly esports players, but also people that like to play shooters. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I play at 1440 ultra wide, and that's fine. But if we get back on topic, because I can get way off topic very easily, we can see now that both CPUs are not able to keep up with the 4090 at 1080p. The 4090 is CPU bound on both sides, and you can see this actually we have a lot higher FPS on the 7800X 3D side. So we have the 4090 going up to 80-ish% of GPU utilization, whereas on the 5900X, we're in the 50s and 60s of percent utilization. But anyway, what are the differences now? Have things changed a lot since 1440p? Well, if we were to take a look at the numbers, the 4090 with the 7800X 3D is 30% faster than the 5900X on the averages and 43% faster on the 1% lows. We literally went up an extra 10% on both averages and 1% lows by dropping to 1080p. So yeah, pretty big difference here, even bigger difference. But this is mostly single player, no teammates here, and this planet is not as demanding as another planet that we're going to take a look at now, and this will be team-focused gameplay. And I'll also show you that the results can also vary depending on what's going on. And now we're going to make our way to Malevolent Creek, where I literally had to go through hell to capture some of this footage, because some of the missions, there were some people that were just doing their own thing, and we kept dying. It was fun though. The chaos was immeasurable. This planet is crazy. There's a lot of enemies here, and it's not just like bugs that swarm you. These enemies will shoot at you, they'll throw grenades and do all kinds of stuff, rush you, but it's a lot of fun. But it's also the most demanding planet, and this is all multiplayer gameplay. Okay, we're going to begin with the settings here, and we're going to start with 4K native, maxed out settings, and then we're going to move our way to the quality render scale and also balance render scale. Now immediately, if you pay close attention, you can tell that the gap is a little bit wider now than the first 4K native we looked at the very beginning of the video. Oh my god. The guy's screaming. If you're shooting a machine gun and you don't let go of the trigger, your character will yell out something. It's hilarious. This game cracks me up still. There's always new little things I find. It's hilarious. But if we take a look at the numbers, now we can see that the 7800X 3D in this planet with multiplayer is 15% faster on the averages and 13% faster on the 1% lows. So the gap is actually bigger than the first 4K footage we took a look at earlier on the Bug Ice planet. And it kind of makes sense. There's a lot more going on here. Group gameplay. Even on my 3080 Ti video, I showed that this planet was a bit more demanding, but we were using the same CPU there. And here, you can actually see the GPU utilization on the 5900X side. It'll actually drop a little bit below the mid-90s. And that's another thing that I've noticed with this game. Even when I know I'm not CPU bound, it never goes to 99%. Even with my 6800 XT that I did a video on, I was playing this game at 1440p with the 5900X. It never went to 99. So I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's an engine thing. So that doesn't really tell the whole story. But we can see, if you pay close attention to the GPU utilization on the 5900X, it does drop to the 80s sometimes. So we are definitely hitting some CPU bottlenecks here for the 4090 on the 5900X. On the 7800X 3D, I would like to say that we are good, because once we drop to the quality render scale, you will see that that gap between the two CPUs will get even wider, as you would expect it to be, right? But anyway, let's take a look at the quality render scale, and then I'm also going to show you that, again, why it's not apples to apples. Because even though I'm in the same area with a team of people and I'm doing the same type of mission, the locations are randomly generated, and so are the enemies, and the amount of enemies you engage with and all that sort of thing can actually affect things. You know, if you kill a lot of the enemies from a distance, or do they come up close and there's a lot of explosions, all that stuff actually affect the performance. And I'm actually going to show you a very good example that I've put aside after we look at the quality render scale. I will show you how that can happen. So that's why these comparisons are mostly done out of curiosity. It's not like maybe it's a bit academic, I guess, just to see the performance, but it's not like a, 100% accurate, I would say. I wouldn't consider it 100% accurate unless I could match the footage and it's exactly the same area, fight the same enemies. That's something you can do in single player games, not really on multiplayer games, unfortunately. But yeah, if we were to go ahead and compare the numbers though, now the 7800X 3D is 24% faster on the averages and 28% faster on the 1% lows over the 5900X. So that gap has widened quite a bit more, as we expected it would. We've essentially gone up another 10% faster for the 7800X 3D by going from 4K native to 4K quality render scale, which I believe that is 1440p. Again, I genuinely think that what they're using here for render scale is FSR1. I mean, the quality settings match it with the ultra quality setting, but also looking at the visuals, I just see quite a bit more degradation in aliasing with the render scale enabled than I would expect FSR2 to be a little bit better on the aliasing part of it. That's kind of what leads me to believe that it could be FSR1. But anyway, so remember this: average 24% faster and 1% low 28% faster. Now, why don't we take a look at my ultra quality recording that I did, and you will see how much bigger the difference is, which can only result because the differences in the gameplay and what was going on was so vast that the results kind of don't make much sense, because here we're at quality setting. Now we're going to ultra quality. So the gap should actually be narrower, not bigger. But what is it like? Let's take a look at it. So we're going to hop over to the ultra quality test that I did. And essentially, the gameplay, the mission that I played on the 5900X was a way more chaotic than the one I played on the 7800X 3D for this. And as a result, if I was to compare the numbers, we have the 7800X 3D side being 39% faster on the averages and 41% faster on the 1% lows, which kind of doesn't make sense if you think about it. Although what has my curiosity piqued is that I wonder how the 7800X 3D would do if it was that exact gameplay, right? But there's no way to replicate that, right? But I just want you guys to know this, that don't take some of these benchmarks as like the be-all and end-all. They kind of tell a story, but that story can also change depending on the type of gameplay, because the nature of the game matters. Unless it's like a set benchmark that's been designed by the developer that you can run, it's exactly the same. The results can skew one way or the other. It depends. It's nothing intentional. It's just the nature of the game, and that's kind of the results you can end up with sometimes. So when I watched this, I was going to cut the ultra quality out completely because I felt it wasn't fair or representative, really, because the two missions were so different. But then I figured I might as well show it and kind of give some context why the numbers would be so different, because if I had not and I just put it in, it wouldn't make sense. How is ultra quality the difference even wider than this much wider than quality, right? It wouldn't make sense. But anyway, let's check out the last part, and that is 4K balance render scale, which I think has to be 1080p rendering. Let's begin with the settings again, and we've dropped render scale to balance, which in my opinion, I think it's 1080p, and yeah, we're getting a ton of FPS here. And if you look, the 7800X CD, the 4090 is CPU bound. We're well below 90% GPU utilization, and on the 5900X, we're dropping to the 70s and 60s. So both GPUs, both sides are CPU bound, I mean to say. What are the differences though? Well, if we look, the 7800X 3D is 41% faster on the averages and 28% faster on the 1% lows. Now the 1% lows are a bit lower than I thought they would be. Normally the averages 1% lows are somewhat close in this game, so I don't know what happened there. I don't know, maybe I didn't record it properly. It could be, I'm not sure. but I mean, we have the 1080p results to see that, you know, the gap between these two is I mean, you're at that 30 to 40%, right? Like I mentioned previously, we know through reviews that the 7800X 3D is around 30% faster in gaming than a 5900X or a Ryzen 5000's non-X 3D CPUs. So that's kind of reflective here. Now, does the CPU really matter? I think it does. Like for me, it would, because, you know, I mostly game on my 4090, and on my ultra-wide display, you would notice that faster CPU. And I guess even at 4K you would a little bit, right? If you played a mission like this, which some missions are chaotic, and the developers have said that they're going to add vehicles and mechs into the game later on, which is very exciting. I'm really loving this game. But I also did want to take a dive and check out the CPUs and see what the differences are, because this is a I think they're using Stingray engine, which is not an engine I'm familiar with, but I kind of wanted to sort of document it and see. And I also find the performance in the game to be very impressive. The 1% lows are very, very good. Frame times are really, really good here. And there is no shader compilation step that happens before the game, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, I think that'll be it for this video, guys. If you did enjoy it, give it a like and subscribe for more content. And leave your comments below. Let me know what you think, if you have any suggestions. And I appreciate you watching. Thanks. Bye.